A severe housing shortage prompted the 1957 Interbell exhibition, in which modernist towers and slabs set apart in green areas on the urban periphery were to rehouse residents from the inner city. In turn, older dwellings in the central area were to be torn down to make land available for office development and green spaces. But before city officials could complete their plans, residents took matters into their own hands and occupied the buildings, even in the absence of such basic amenities as toilets. Several things made the squatters undesirable to city officials. They were either poor, students, or foreign minorities, hardly the ideal residents for a new urban center in the eyes of bourgeois politicians, and hence politically expendable. The battles between squatters and Berlin police made international news during the 1970s, and without the intervention of a second, more respectable social group, preservation is bent on rescuing what little remained of traditional Berlin housing stock and buildings. The outcome of the battle could well have been different.
With the goals of refurbishing old and providing new housing, as well as improving depressed areas of Berlin, the IBA, or International Building Exhibition, initiated in 1977, set out to weave together public funds, public interest, private development, and some of the most prominent architects in the world in order to realize an ambitious citywide building and rehabilitation program, announced at its inception as a permanent exhibition as well as a patrimony of new housing. Politicians and designers did not develop the IBA in a vacuum. The impulse came from the residents of Berlin, with slogans such as "Rescue the Ruined City," "The Inner City as a Dwelling Place," and "Democracy as a Construction Manager." They urged that the urban fabric become a political priority and that the new housing be created without tearing down what remained of the old. They also decisively rejected the skyscraper as a housing solution.
War destruction and the post-war occupation that eventually divided the city into East and West Berlin had regulated the entire Tiergarten district to a peripheral position. City officials conceived of the competition with the view that the peripheral condition was in every regard temporary. In anticipation of the time when the occupation of the city and its division by the wall would end, they sought proposals that would accommodate the Tiergarten after its return to a central position in Berlin, freed from the control of France, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. This acknowledgement of a fixed relationship between East and West Berlin, in which the occupying powers and the two Germanys had clear roles, determined Berlin's identity not only at a local scale, but also a global one. It established the city as a microcosm of Cold War politics. The exhibition will have an essential influence on the intellectual image of Berlin. Rather than searching for the correct model for a city, IBA was responsible for producing models for a city, a range of possibilities for the renovation of the late 20th century inner city. These models stood securely as representatives of current architectural theories. IBA's buildings then arose out of a project focused on the perpetual exchange of ideas. These buildings stood as another form of IBA documentation, as evidence of a discussion, of a work forever in progress. West Berlin streets became the site for this exchange of ideas on which the IBA buildings permanently inscribed its presence. The two sociologists who coined the concept of the risk society point out that it means living after nature and after tradition. Nature is no longer independent from the economy and scientific manipulation, and tradition can no longer cope with the way individuals live in a deregulated global society. The results of these two shifts they call reflexive modernization, because the new society has to reflect back on a first modernization and its unpredictable consequences. It is conscious of the feedback of all processes, hence the pervasive feelings of insecurity, and it must debate the implications. Postmodernism in architecture has been the response to that failure. If one reflects on the list of crises above, one can find postmodern responses, but none of these have cleared up the problems. They are chronic to modernization itself, endemic to advanced economies. No easy answers, just hybrid ones, reflexive ones, more choices and a few perpetuous inventions. Such notions are consistent with a new paradigm and its emphasis on self-organizing systems of feedback. The notion of an external deity in charge of the world was replaced by the modern belief that the world was a predictable machine. This concept has itself been replaced by the idea of cosmogenesis, a picture of the universe as a dynamic process that often jumps to new levels of organization. This is a world more chaotic and full of risk and choice than the mechanistic paradigm it is superseding, because it shows we are more and more part of the problem and its solution.